Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where every day I will beam your ears to a different part of the world and share a human story of how technology is transforming our work, an entire industry, our lives, and even world. And today I've invited Girish, the CEO and co-founder of a company called Sprinto, onto the podcast. And they help SaaS brands become more compliant and close enterprise deals faster. And for startup founders listening, he also has a great story to share of how he took his first company called RecruiterBox from SMB to enterprise, gaining over 2,500 customers and then exiting in an all-cash deal. We've got a lot to talk about today, so buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you're listening in the world, I'm now going to beam your ears all the way to Bangalore in India, where Girish is waiting to share his story and expertise.
So I'm Girish. I'm co-founder and CEO of Sprinto.com. And Sprinto is a platform that helps other B2B SaaS companies breeze through their security and privacy compliances. And we do that via automation. So personally, I'm a programmer first, and I'm happiest and most comfortable when I'm writing code. However, as a founder, I end up wearing a lot of other hats. For instance, today I do sales at Sprinto. And Sprinto isn't my first tech company. Before this, I co-founded another company called RecruiterBox, which was a CRM for hiring. And we grew that to more than 2,500 customers and exited it to a Bay Area PE firm. So that's roughly a little bit about me.
And you mentioned that you're happiest when you're coding. So I'd love to take you back to where all this began. I mean, where did your passion come from? What lit the spark in you? Or should I say, how did you get here? What's your origin story? There's got to be a story there, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I studied engineering, but I didn't really professionally program, nor did I ever dream of running a technology startup, honestly, at the time. My first couple of jobs were into data analytics. So I was wrangling spreadsheets and presentations and crunching numbers for the most part. So incidentally, my friend back then and we decided to do a startup together. And honestly, we didn't really know what we were doing at the time. It just seemed like a more concrete thing to do than the other option was to do an MBA. So we said we'd rather do this. And I think we spent the first couple of years just meandering. We built a lot of stuff that nobody really wanted. And before we actually built RecruiterBox, I think the useful thing though was that during those couple of frustrating years, we did teach ourselves to program and build products fast, which was a very useful thing later on. So RecruiterBox thankfully became successful. So we learned a thing or two about building technology companies along the way. But that's kind of my journey,
Brilliant. Absolutely love it. And obviously from there, I remember reading that you took your first company called RecruiterBox from an SMB to enterprise, gaining over 2.5 customers and exiting in an all-cash deal. Can you share that story too? It's a huge leap for you, right?
Like I said, RecruiterBox was a CRM for hiring, and among other things, it was also a bootstrapped company. So, we had like a couple of lean years. We built a bunch of things which didn't really go anywhere, but somehow we got to our first 10 customers with RecruiterBox, and we started believing that this business has legs, and we could grow it out of here. And I think our first challenge then, if I remember correctly, was to start hiring folks beyond the founders ourselves, which meant we needed an office. Because until then we were just working from someone's home. So there was this first few weird months where we had to, learn how to run a real business. Thankfully, we did some of that, and the business kept growing, and but we were still bootstrapped, which meant that we couldn't hire experienced executives, which also meant that in one way or the other, we had to teach ourselves all aspects of actually running a tech company, which meant like from running engineering to running product management, design, sales, marketing. Each of these functions are something that, we did it hands-on before we could hire someone to take them over. And I remember, like most companies would probably do, we started with smaller customers, and then we slowly learned to go up market to more and more enterprise customers, and realized that they are not just more demanding, they had different buying behavior. So we had to learn how to, sell software to somebody for whom this is mission critical. and they pushed our products to its limits. And they were also our power users, and they would churn less, so which was a good thing on the other side. I think overall we did pretty well. We were growing by about 100 new customers a month, and we had already spent about 6 months of running RecruiterBox by then when an offer came along, and we thought, yeah, maybe it's time to do something even bigger. So that's roughly how that journey went.
So you did exactly that. You exited, you went away to do something bigger, and that path led you to Sprinto. So can you share the story behind Sprinto and the kind of problems that you set out to solve at the very beginning, and why you didn't want customers to be forced to choose between agility and security, and the story behind that, wanting to solve that problem as well?
You know, the germs of sort of the seeds of what happened at Sprinter were germinated when we were actually doing RecruiterBox. So you know, while we were trying to move up market at RecruiterBox, we were increasingly getting asked these questions about our security practices and the measures that we are taking to keep our customers' data safe. And few of them asked for these compliances like SOC-2, and we kicked the can down the road for a couple of times. We didn't really want to do that. It seemed like a very heavy, painful endeavor, which is going to slow us down. It's going to need us to implement a bunch of these security practices. And we were still a small team. So we were trying to avoid it as much as possible, but it became clear that this is something that's necessary to do an enterprise sale. And at some point, we actually bit the bullet. We hired a consultant to help us with this process. And that began like excruciating 6 months where, we were cannibalizing a bunch of our internal projects just to make space for this. It wasn't really going anywhere. It was really painful to get this done. And we somehow went through the process. So what we do at Sprinter is, we sort of built out from that pain. We understand that this is something that is increasingly becoming pain for technology companies. They need to provide some assurance to their partners, to their customers, to the other stakeholders that they take the security seriously. But this is a hard problem to solve. It involves a lot of excruciating manual, menial, busy work kind of work. And what we do at RecruiterBox is, we do this in a manner where, people are today forced to make a choice that they want to be more secure or they want to be slower. And we sort of saying that, hey, you don't need to make that choice. We can keep you as nimble and as fast as you already are while making you more secure. And that's really the key value prop of what we do at Sprinter.
And you've been on a fantastic journey here, and I'm conscious there'll be a lot of startup founders listening at the very beginning of their career path. So for business leaders listening as well, are there any insights that you can share on how to make their SaaS enterprise ready?
I think there is a ton of stuff written out there about how to do this really. But if I had to take one specific thing out of this entire part is that enterprise sales at the end of the day is a confidence game. The most important thing to understand there is you need to come across as a reliable, formidable vendor. And, enterprises are inherently risk averse. They are likely to pick something that's dependable and boring rather than something that's exciting but unpredictable. That's the way they make their buying decisions. And if you put that in a perspective of a software as a service business, I think the most important thing you need to that they worry about and you need to address is, whether you're going to handle their data safely or not. And the more ways and the more reasons that you give them that, hey, we got this and we know what we are doing over here, the smoother your entire process is going to be. So I would say that, making sure that you put this front and center as your enterprise sales strategy is one of the most important tricks that I've learned of the trade, when you're doing this. So I wouldn't disregard that if anybody is looking to do an enterprise sale.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research on you, as I do all my guests. And one of the things that stood out was your belief that information security today is not just a way to defend against attacks, but actually a way to accelerate your company's sales and revenue. Can you expand on that belief?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the last 5 years or so, security has kind of become table stakes. SaaS fundamentally means that my data is on your servers. And as a SaaS buyer, I'm increasingly want some assurance that you're keeping this data safe and secure. So, in the beginning, companies used to think of security as just a way of avoiding their names coming into the papers for the wrong reasons and avoiding threats, and we should do that. However, there's increasingly a trend where the smart enterprise SaaS companies, they make security a centerpiece of their marketing and sales messaging. They want to demonstrate confidence to their customers. So, not just that, security security is actually a way for you to unlock some regulated markets. So if your customers are in markets which are related to healthcare or fintech and so on and so forth, they are going to require you to have some compliances in place and some security programs in place. Or you could be operating in geographies, where which would otherwise not be accessible. So we all famously know about how Europe needs GDPR, and I think UK is coming up with its own version of GDPR. And different countries in the world are coming up with their own privacy programs. So the way to think about this is that this actually helps you expand your market and accelerate your revenue rather than just a way of defending against attacks. So you could think of it as a sales tactic and a marketing tactic as much as you can think of it as a defense tactic.
And another thing, I think every business around the world, it wants to move faster, win those big deals faster, but they're often held back by compliance and regulation, like you just spoke about there. So I'm curious, is there such a thing as a simple strategy that any SaaS company can use to smash through security compliance in days rather than weeks, so they can win those big deals?
You're just giving this to me on a platter, and I'm obviously biased, but yeah, I would just say just go ahead and use Sprinto. This is precisely what we were born to do. So please give us a shout out. Love to talk to you and help you out in there.
Love it. And how do you do that at Sprinto, just for anyone listening?
So what Sprinto really does is that we integrate with a bunch of systems and tools that you would already use. This could be your code repositories, your infrastructure provider like AWS or GCP or Azure or wherever you do it, or your other people management systems like your HRMS system or G Suite where you're managing email. So there are a bunch of systems that you already use that we integrate with, and we automate a bunch of things that you would require in order to run security programs on top of this. These are things that you would otherwise have to do in a manual manner, which is really painful. It takes away a lot of time and effort. What really happens in the process is that we make the entire process 10x faster, 10x less effort for you. So you are kind of cruising through this entire thing without really knowing that, many of our customers actually say that they didn't even realize that they are SOC 2 compliant. They just got through it so quickly. So that's what we really do. We automate all the dirty bits out here so that you can focus on the bits that actually help you and keep you more secure.
Fantastic. And you said at the very beginning of the podcast that when you exited on your first startup and you created Sprinto, it was because it was time to do something different and something bigger. So I don't know how much of this you can share, but what's your grand vision for Sprinto? What's next for you? Where do you go from here?
That's a great question. So, this like I sauld, it sort of came out of our personal experience. What we've learned is that this is a fairly common problem, especially for younger startups, who would like to win these enterprise deals, but today don't even get a seat at the table because compliance is inherently so resource intensive. It requires so much of you to even cross that hurdle that most people wouldn't even go there. And you're sort of keeping yourself away from these great customers just because you cannot cross the compliance hurdle. So the way we look at this is, we are basically leveling the playing field. We are giving these companies, these young companies, a shot at actually implementing an enterprise-grade security program, which they had never had access to before. And our goal is to basically become that, to help help a large number of these companies play at the same table that the big boys play at, and give you access to winning those deals purely on the basis of your product rather than something that used to cost a lot of time, effort, money, which you may not have today. So that's the way we look at it. We eventually want to become the trust currency for all cloud commerce, and this is a path to that.
Well, I wish you the best of luck for the future when you're on this path. I'll stay in touch with you. It'd be great to get you back on maybe next year, see how things are going. But before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests to leave everyone listening with a personal touch of inspiration by sharing maybe a book that has inspired them or a go-to song or piece of music that just helps them get their head in the zone or is important to them. All I ask is what you're going to leave us with today, and is there a story to accompany your choice?
Yeah, I could leave you with a song. My favorite song is Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival. That's something that always gets me up.
What a great song. Yeah, John Fogerty, what a voice. Man, have you always loved that song? Have you grown up with it? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I've known that song since college, and I think it's there's not been a week since that I've not heard that song at least once.
Brilliant. And for anyone listening that wants to find out more information about all the topics we talked about today and equally find out more about Sprinto or contact your team, what's the best starting point for everything?
So we are at sprinter.com. Just, reach us on our website. I'm personally at Girish at sprinter.com. So feel free to drop me a line. Would love to talk to you.
Cannot thank you enough for sharing your very personal story and how you are at your happiest when programming, when coding, and the path that you've been on, how you exited that startup and now doing something much bigger with Sprinter. I wish you the best of luck for the future. We'll stay in touch, but thank you for sharing your story with me today.
Thanks, Neil, for having me. I really enjoyed it.
What a great story. And I think interviews like that are the reason I record this podcast every day. And I feel so privileged to be able to amplify very personal stories of startup founders solving real problems anywhere in the world and then beam it to everywhere in the world. Just having a conversation and then sending it to you all listening everywhere. And if you'd like your voice heard on here, please send me an email, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, at Neil C. Hughes. You got any questions, fire them my way. And also, in a bid to help the podcast against these algorithms that we're all a slave to, if you wouldn't mind leaving me a rating and review on whatever platform you listen, send me a screenshot of what you've done, and I'll give you a shout out on a future episode. But as always, keep those questions coming over. Pictures to come on the podcast, whatever it may be, and photos of where you listen to the podcast in the world, and allow me to live my life vicariously through your eyes while I'm talking into your ears. That sounds a little bit sinister, doesn't it? Well, on that note, I'll stop rambling and get out of here, but I'll be back again tomorrow with another guest, and I'll beam your ears to another part of the world with another story. But thank you for listening today, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.